Passive resistance. Reader, is there any historical evidence as to the success of what you have called soul force or truth force? No instance seems to have happened of any nation having risen through soul force. I still think that the evildoers will not cease doing evil without physical punishment. Editor. The poet Tulsidas has said of religion, pity or love is the root as egotism of the body. Therefore, we should not abandon pity so long as we are alive. This appears to me to be a scientific truth. I believe in it as much as I believe in 2 and 2 being 4. The force of love is the same as the force of the soul or truth. We have evidence of its working at every step. The universe would disappear without the existence of that force. But you ask for historical evidence. It is therefore necessary to know what history means. The Gujarati equivalent means it so happened. If that is the meaning of history, it is possible to give copious evidence. But if it means the doings of kings and emperors, there can be no evidence of sole force of passive resistance in such history. You cannot expect silver ore in a tin mine. History as we know it is a record of the wars of the world. And so there is a proverb amongst Englishmen that a nation which has no history, that is, no wars, is a happy nation. How kings played, how they became enemies of one another, and how they murdered one another is found accurately recorded in history. And if there were all that had happened in the world, it would have ended a long time ago. If the story of the universe had commenced with wars, not a man would have been found alive today. Those people who have been warred against have disappeared, as, for instance, the natives of Australia, of whom hardly a man was left alive by the intruders. Mark, please, that these natives did not use soul force in self defense, and it does not require much foresight to know that the Australians will share the same fate as their victims. Those that wield the sword shall perish by the sword. With us, that proverb in that professional swimmers will find a watery grave. The fact that there are many men still alive in the world shows that it is based not on the force of arms but on the force of truth or love. Therefore, the greatest and most unimpeachable evidence of the success of this force is to be found in the fact that, in spite of wars of the world, it still lives on. Thousands, indeed tens of thousands, depend for their existence on a very active working of this force. Little quarrels of millions of families in their daily lives disappear before the exercise of this force. Hundreds of nations live in peace. History does not and cannot take note of this fact. History is really a record of every interruption of even working of the force of love or of the soul. Two brothers quarrel. One of them repents and reawakens the love that was lying dormant in him. The two again begin to live in peace. Nobody takes note of this. But if the two brothers, through intervention of solicitors for of some other reason, take up arms or go to law, which is another form of exhibition of brute force, their doings would immediately be noticed in the press. They would be the talk of their neighbors and would probably go down in history. And what is true of families and communities is true of nations. There is no reason to believe that there is one law for families and another for nations. History, then, is a record of an interruption of the course of nature. Soul force, being natural, is not noted in history. Reader, according to what you say, it is plain that instances of the kind of passive resistance are not to be found in history. It is necessary to understand this passive resistance more fully. It will be better, therefore, if you enlarge upon it. Editor. Passive resistance is a method of securing rights by personal suffering. It is the reverse of resistance by arms. When I refuse to do a thing which is repugnant to my conscience, I use soul force. For instance, the government of the day has passed a law which is applicable to me. I do not like it. If, by using violence, I force the government to repeal the law, I am employing what may be termed as body force. If I do not obey the law and accept the penalty for this breach, I use soul force. It involves sacrifice of self. Everybody admits that sacrifice of self is infinitely superior to sacrifice of others. Moreover, if this kind of force is used in a cause that is unjust, only the person using it suffers. He does not make others suffer for his mistakes. Men have before now done many things which were subsequently found to have been wrong. No man can claim to be absolutely in the right, or that particular thing is wrong, because he thinks so. But it is wrong for him so long as that is his deliberate judgment. It is therefore meet that he should not do that which he knows to be wrong, and suffer the consequence whatever it may be. This is the key to the use of soul force. Reader, you would then disregard laws. This is rank disloyalty. We have always been considered a law abiding nation. You seem to be going even beyond the extremists. They say that we must obey the laws that have been passed, but that if the laws be bad, we must drive out the lawgivers even by force. Editor, whether I go beyond them or whether I do not is a matter of no consequence to either of us. We simply want to find out what is right and to act accordingly. The real meaning of the statement that we are a law abiding nation is that we are passive resistors. When we do not like certain laws, we do not break the heads of lawgivers, but we suffer and do not submit to the laws. That we should obey laws, whether good or bad, is a new-fangled notion. There was no such thing in former days. The people disregarded those laws they did not like and suffered penalties for their breach. It is contrary to our manhood if we obey laws repugnant to our conscience. Such teaching is opposed to religion and means slavery. If the government were to ask us to go without any clothing, should we do so? If I were a passive resistor, I would say to them that I would have nothing to do with their law. But we have so forgotten ourselves and become so compliant that we do not mind any degrading law. A man who has realized his manhood, who fears only God, will fear no one else. Man-made laws are not necessarily binding on him. Even the government does not expect any such thing from us. They do not say, you must do such and such a thing, but they say, if you do not do it, we will punish you. We are sunk so low that we fancy that it is our duty and our religion to do what the law lays down. If man will only realize that it is unmanly to obey laws that are unjust, no man's tyranny will enslave him. This is the key to self-rule or home rule. It is a superstition and an ungodly thing to believe that an act of majority binds a minority. Many examples can be given in which acts of majorities will be found to have been wrong and those of minorities to have been right. All reforms owe their origin to the initiation of minorities in opposition to majorities. If among a band of robbers, knowledge of robbing is obligatory, is a pious man to accept obligation? So long as the superstition that men should obey unjust laws exists, so long will their slavery exist. And a passive resistor alone can remove such a superstition. To use brute force, to use gunpowder, is contrary to passive resistance, for it means that we want our opponent to do by force that which we desire, but he does not. And if such a use of force is unjustifiable, surely he is entitled to do likewise by us. And so we should never come to an agreement. We may simply fancy, like the blind horse moving in a circle around a mill, that we are making progress. Those who believe that they are not bound to obey laws which are repugnant to their conscience have only the remedy of passive resistance upon them. And any other must lead to disaster. Reader, from what you say, I deduce that passive resistance is a splendid weapon of the weak, but that when they are strong, they must take up arms. Editor, this is gross ignorance. Passive resistance, that is, soul force, is matchless. It is superior to the force of arms. How, then, can it be considered only a weapon of the weak? Physical force men are strangers to the courage that is a requisite in a passive resistor. Do you believe that a coward can ever disobey a law that he dislikes? Extremists are considered to be advocates of brute force. Why do they, then, talk about obeying laws? I do not blame them. They can say nothing else. When they succeed in driving out the English and they find themselves become governors, they will want you and me to obey their laws. And that is a fitting thing for their constitution. But a passive resistor will say that he will not obey a law that is against his conscience, even though he may be blown to pieces at the mouth of the cannon. What do you think? Wherein is courage required? In blowing others to pieces from behind a cannon, or with a smiling face to approach a cannon and be blown to pieces? Who is the true warrior? He who keeps death always as a bosom friend, or he who controls the death of others? Believe me, that a man devoid of courage and manhood can never be a passive resistor. This, however, I will admit, that even a man weak in body is capable of offering his resistance. One man can offer it just as well as millions. Both men and women can indulge in it. It does not require the training of an army, it needs no jiu-jitsu. Control over the mind is alone necessary, and when that is attained, man is free like the king of the forest, and his very glance withers the enemy. Passive resistance is an all sided sword. It can be used anyhow. It blesses him who uses it and him against whom it is used. Without drawing a drop of blood, it produces far reaching results. It never rusts and cannot be stolen. Competition between passive resistors does not exhaust. The sword of passive resistance does not require a scabbard. It is strange indeed that you should consider such a weapon to be a weapon merely of the weak.